Hey, Walter Sorrells back with another Knife Making Friday 5. Today, flatness. So those of you who've been following me recently know that I just got a new mill, CNC Tormach 770 mill. And so I've been working recently on fixture plates. So the idea of fixture plates is that you have sort of a master plate that attaches to your table here, and then that's drilled with a bunch of fairly precise holes that allow you to put additional plates on top. So you can put a whole bunch of parts on a plate that's made specifically for a particular handle scale or something like that. Put it on the plate, screw it down, route them all out or whatever, and then you take it off and you put another one on. And each time those plates are going to go on in a repeatable sort of way. Point being that if they're not flat, you're going to be stacking these plates up. They're not going to mate very well, and you're going to have problems with holes being drilled funny and things are going to be off. So making everything dead flat is really important. The reason I bring this up is it got me thinking about flatness just as a kind of general concept for knife makers. Flatness is super important in knife making. Why? Well, just to take for instance, here's a knife that I carry every day. Very simple knife that's part of my Tactics Armory line, and it just consists of these two little scales on a piece of steel. Now, there are no gaps between the scale and the handle, and that's really important. First, because it looks crappy if you have little gaps there, but second, there's a functional issue too. If you have a knife that has gaps between, let's say, a wooden handle and the tang of the knife, oil can get in there, solvents, blood, whatever can get in there and cause those scales to swell and eventually pop off the knife. Now that's just one example of many, many instances where flatness is important. And flatness is kind of the cousin of perpendicularity or squareness. If you don't have things flat on one surface, you can't make other things square to that surface. Squareness is important not only for drilling holes, but also for, let's say, the way that a guard mates with the ricasso of a knife, or the way a bolster matches with the scale of the knife. You got to have nice, dead, flat, and square surfaces in order to get those really clean kinds of mating surfaces that you want for a really polished knife. So, how do you get there? Well, of course, it's great to have a $10,000 surface grinder or something, a mill like this, whatever, but you don't have to have those. And in fact, one of the interesting things is that in the machine tool business, when machinists want things really, really, really flat, they go back to hand methods. So, if you're making a really high quality lathe bed, machine tool makers will actually hand scrape that, and they can get down to 20 millionths of an inch or something. I mean, just crazy tolerances, all by hand. The key to it is that they use reference surfaces which will help them indicate whether that surface is flat or not. So what's a reference surface? Well, it could be some super high quality giant cast iron surface plate or something, but guess what? For knife makers purposes, you don't need that kind of thing. This right here, I don't know what this cost me, $6 or something at Home Depot. That edge is actually nice and flat. For the purposes of most knife making purposes, this is actually as flat as anything you do needs to be. So when you're testing a surface, let's say you're grinding a handle scale and you want it nice and flat, you can hold that up with the your reference surface here, your ruler. Hold it up to a light and just look through it, and if there's a gap between the reference surface, the ruler here, and whatever it is that you're trying to make flat, you'll see a little shiny line through there. It's that simple. And you know, there are a lot of different kinds of reference surfaces that you can find in your shop. This piece of MDF here, extremely flat. You know, it's just a super cheap thing that you can buy down at Lowe's, but it's very flat. Glass, very flat. You can tape a piece of sandpaper to a piece of glass, grind back and forth on it by hand, and you can make things extremely flat. So the overall point is, just because you don't have fancy machinery doesn't mean that you can't make high quality knives. You just need to be ingenious about how you use the tools that you have to get the highest quality result that you can. So one last quick little tip before we go is, anytime you're flattening something, always flatten the stock and not the part itself. What I mean is, if you're going to be taking a piece of flat stock and trimming it to the shape of a knife, don't trim it or grind it or whatever and then flatten it. Flatten that big piece first and then trim it to the shape that you're ultimately going to use. The reason I say that is that no matter what method you use, even if you're using a $10,000 surface grinder, typically almost any kind of flattening maneuver will roll edges of material just a little bit. And especially when you're doing handwork, scrubbing something back and forth on a piece of sandpaper or whatever, there's a tendency to roll the edges of your stock. So just start with the biggest piece you have, flatten that, and then trim the edges so that you're preserving the flattest part of your stock for whatever it is that you're making, be it a handle scale, blade, tang, whatever it might be. All right, so that about wraps it up for today. I'll see you next Friday, and stay flat.